students that are undergraduates and graduate students. We also, as a core value, I'm not going to read all of these, but as a core value, the Archie Motley Internship Program is definitely, it falls right in this area, increased diversity of caretakers of our collections. Most people are aware, if you are familiar with libraries and archives and museums, that the percentage of people of color, African Americans, Latinos, Asian American, and all of the groups, is really quite small. So although the BMRC is not a large institution, we have 20, as Marcia said, members that are, very active, and some of them have participated in hosting interns. I'll share that with you. So the BMRC members who have hosted are listed here, whether they are continuing to host, because some of them have repetitively done so over the years, or in the past. They do go through a process to compete, and their projects, the projects they have in mind are reviewed by a committee. So I've put a few little details. They submit a detailed project description. We ask them to address skill sets and their specific expectations. Although we don't want to have students sort of left out if they haven't had as much experience, but we do tend to look towards upper level undergraduate students for the most part, and then sometimes graduate students as well. We do ask about the structure so that we have an idea as this process is going on, what they're looking for, and it helps us to plan for the application process for the students. And we have these projects in our mind as we are because after this process is over, we are then beginning to interview students, read applications and interview students. So this is a very helpful part of the process. Yeah, so I wanted to list some intern projects. I couldn't fit them all on one screen, and I won't read them all off, but I just wanted you to see that there is a variety. You will notice that, for instance, on this slide, all of these projects were done in person. Obviously, these were done before the pandemic, which we did have to switch over to remote learning, to a fully remote internship for the most part. So, but processing collections and are key part of what has been done in the past with regard to interns. It's been a little different recently. And I will say that in the past, when it was an in-person internship fully, the BMRC provided orientation in person and also some training with practice, and a full handbook and practice learning how to create a finding aid and what terms meant and things of that nature. So we have not been able to do that in the last 2 years, and they have done different sorts of projects. You'll see on the next slide. So you can see develop oral history interviews, and oral history interviews were really a big part of this past summer 2021 at both Northwestern and Chicago History Museum. We did also have, there's an ongoing really huge project at CHM, at Chicago History Museum, metadata enhancement for the Rayburn Fleurich photograph collection, which is ginormous. And so in 2020, we had an intern work on it. And then again in 2021, because CHM has continued to have interest in having an intern, hosting an intern, which has been great. So that was a metadata enhancement project for that collection. And all of these were done remotely. Well, not the Chicago Reporter one. Thank you, Marcia. So research is embedded in all of the projects, and I just pulled out a couple of them to share with you. In the metadata enhancement for Rayburn Flurlich, you know, it's one of the interns, the intern from 2020 described it as sort of fake being involved in a mystery. And he quite enjoyed the challenge and the challenge of the unknown, because there are so many images that are not identified, people and places and things. And so learning how to do that and what resources CHM, the supervisor there, had for him to use that, in addition to, you know, using Google as well, was just fascinating. And the same, that it is such a huge project, it continued again this summer, and with the positive response from this year's intern as well. And I pulled one other out, and that was at Northwestern. We sent two. This is a really huge project at Northwestern's, at Northwestern, I'm sorry. And we sent two, we were able to send two interns for them. They did do extensive background research on activities that were happening at the time in the 60s and the 70s decade, before participating in the oral history interviews. And it allowed them to be prepared. They had a full, I think, 2 weeks, possibly 3, of the internship before, of research, of just the research piece, before they became involved in the oral history part of it. And then after that they transcribed, of course. So this year, for the first time, I introduced a little, I call it a mini course, but that sounds too formal. I set up an enrichment and professional development section of the internship, so that in my mind, it would be, there would be more opportunities to have conversation about what's going on in the profession. I pulled articles, we had discussions. I required them to do 2 informational interviews. In most cases, there were people in the profession, but in some cases, it might have been a professor extensively involved in history, et cetera. But we had guest speakers. Marcia was one of them, did a fabulous job with the oral history piece. So, and I'm proud to say that one of the former, I think she was a 2017, or maybe, yeah, no, actually she was in 2016, Archie Motley intern, was one of our guest speakers for this year's group. So success stories. So 15 students have completed the Archie Motley Archival Internship Program. And I just wanted to let you know, we've had one that has taken a job as a reader services and admin assistant just recently at the University of Chicago. One project archivist at the Chicago History Museum has been there for a few years. And at the Newberry, there's a digital technician that was an Archie Motley intern, and one assistant professor and special collections librarian at University of Illinois, Chicago. So I think that's about it. I hope that sums up the program for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison, for sharing more about the Archie Motley Archival Internship Program. I did see that there were a couple questions that came into the chat about requirements for the program and potential projects. We will certainly get to those after all presentations. We'll make sure to come back and respond to them. So thank you. Just wanted to register that we have received them. So next up, I'm going to introduce Laurie Moses, who is the BMRC's portal archivist. Laurie is an archivist and tech enthusiast who joined the BMRC in May 2020. She is charged with updating, re-envisioning, and transforming the collections database to offer enhanced discoverability of member organizations' collections in a user-friendly and sustainable way. Moses became familiar with the BMRC's dynamic mission, programs, and staff at the Center for Black Music Research, where she welcomed BMRC fellows, interns, and teams for the survey initiative and color curtain processing project to the archives. She brings to the BMRC over a decade of experience in facilitating access to archival materials, which are central to the study of African and diasporic history and culture. And there's definitely more to everyone's bios that you'll be able to see on our website. And I will remember to pop that link into the chat. I'll be sharing for Laurie as well. So Laurie, I'll just get your presentation up and going.
Great. Well, thanks for that intro, and Allison for your piece. I am turning to the collections focus on the strategic plan. And as Marcia said, what I've been up to is overhauling and enhancing the collections information portal to help illuminate the landscape of archival holdings, documenting Black experiences around Chicago and beyond. So what were some of the issues that the BMRC collection projects, including the database portal, were created to solve? As you may know, there is often a long lead time from acquiring or accessioning a collection to making it available for use. Many collections can be hard to find, especially for novice scholars. And important sets of materials might be effectively hidden in plain sight within larger collections. To do research in Black history and culture, you sometimes have to read between the lines, and that takes a little bit of experience or guidance and help. The collections might also be unprocessed. And of course, institutional policies vary around how you can use those materials. But for example, some things that often might not get picked up within a large collection of personal papers that were not primarily created by an African-American, there might be something like a rich and lively correspondence with letters from an important African-American writer. The access headings might not note this, and so a treasure trove ends up as the proverbial needle in the haystack. And finally, repositories don't always have staff with the subject matter expertise in every domain to be able to analyze and assign all the relevant access terms to a given collection. Yet this is another area in which the consortium can make a difference. I'll have more about that later. Next slide, please. The survey initiative sought to remedy these issues through poring over the holdings of archives, libraries, museums, and community organizations. They work to discover the substantial breadth and depth of the collections right here in Chicago, the Chicago area, that document aspects of African-American life. Now, it may come as a surprise to you, but archives and special collections departments are sometimes understaffed. Backlogs of unprocessed, thank you for that laugh. Backlogs of unprocessed collections are waiting in storerooms. However, many were surveyed during the project, which at least increased awareness of the riches that we await. Next slide, please. And with the grant-funded color curtain processing project, BMRC teams helped member institutions to move collections along the pipeline to access by organizing and describing selected collections. Next. Around the same time, the University of Chicago had two collections projects underway with similar goals of mapping the stacks and uncovering Chicago Archives project. These projects made more information about Black historical materials available online, as did the collections database hosted on the current BMRC website. That mapping the stacks information was folded into the uncapped site eventually. Okay, Marcia. So this, as you can see on the slide, the 4 projects that I mentioned, the 2 organizations, all these websites are created with grant projects. 3 platforms, 2 search pages that we ended up with now because of the new BMRC has a new website and content management system. But the new BMRC portal will include relevant collection descriptions from these 4 projects. You could show the next slide, please. Plus, we will add new and updated information from BMRC member organizations on a regular basis, including all the collections that have been acquired or processed since 2013. The portal will bring descriptions of materials from around Chicago together in the one online space, opening the door to discovering new connections among relevant collections held at a variety of institutions, and to being able to see a research topic with a broader and more comprehensive perspective. An important benefit of gathering collections documents from across a consortium in this way is that as staff and then students become more aware of related materials in the whole landscape of collections in our area, they also learn more about the subject domain itself. This allows librarians and archivists to provide greater in-depth reference service for inquiries into Black history and culture for materials in their own holdings. And then in turn, they're also more aware of and more able to readily refer people to other resources located at repositories nearby. In fact, it's not uncommon for one person's personal papers or an organization's records to be spread out among several different archives. I changed the slide too soon. That's okay. You have a chance to look at it. The new site incorporates more discovery features, striving to offer advanced choices without being difficult to use for any level of scholar, including novices. Our focus is on making the site user-friendly, accessible, and approachable to draw everyone into learning more about Black experiences. You see on the left, the open search bar will do a full text search and attempt to accommodate a variety of strategies on the back end to provide useful results. You can browse and refine your search by facets. I don't know if you can see the browse by topics, people, etc. You can sort the results quickly using buttons for relevance, alpha, up and down, and then you can choose a shuffle button to get a new perspective. You'll have to see that later because I didn't give you a slide on that. The 3 features in the center of the homepage, you can look at the larger image on the right of the slide, reveal different entryways into Black history. On the right is a clickable window that displays a new facet from the database each time the page is refreshed. In the middle, we will offer exhibits on subjects, people, events, or themes using collection materials from several different member holdings. Again, revealing the multiple collections and breadth of the documentation of Black experiences available in the consortium. And on the left is it will be a featured topic from our work in progress, the BMRC curated topics list. The BMRC is working with faculty in Black studies, archivists, reference librarians, and other staff at member institutions, community experts, and our portal working group members to create a controlled vocabulary of topics that are important to scholars and students of Black history and culture, framing the unique issues and achievements of people of African descent with a specificity and understanding that is not often found in more general subject tools or in general usage. We have to create exhibits around themes that are suggested by the topics list as well. The curated topics list aims to capture the domain of knowledge in Black studies in a dynamic way. Next slide, please, Marcia. Acting as a subject matter expert at your elbow, you don't have to have them on staff necessarily, we're trying to help, and revealing areas of depth in our collective holdings, as well as pointing out new directions for documenting Black experiences, not only throughout history, but for today. We will be ready to preview the site soon. Watch for the full launch in February for Black History Month. So I think that's it. Feel free to contact me with feedback or questions at any time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Laurie. And again, we are registering the questions that are coming into the chat, and we'll get to those just after our final presenter, which is Tanya Calvin, the BMRC's Community Engagement Archivist. So I'm going to read just a little bit of their bio, and then we'll start with Tanya's presentation. Tanya Calvin joined the BMRC as the Community Engagement Archivist in June of 2020. Tanya is responsible for connecting with the BMRC's member institutions and doing outreach with the larger Black community in Chicago to advise them with best archives and collections practices. By working directly with the different Black communities in Chicago, Tanya closes the gap between archives and the communities they serve. Tanya was a Black Studies major and Latinx and Latin American Studies double major at Amherst College, where they also worked as an assistant in the Robert Frost Library Archives and Special Collections for 3 years. I'll also just briefly mention that in the summer of 2019, Tanya worked as an intern in the Archives Department of the Chicago History Museum through the Robert F. Smith Internship Program with the National Museum of African American History and Culture. There, Tanya processed a backlog visual materials collection connected to the Reverend Joseph H. Jackson papers and created a Google Arts and Culture online exhibit showcasing the collections. So Tanya, we're ready for you to take it away.
Thank you so much, Marcia, for that intro. I'm going to share my screen quickly here. Can you all see that okay? Get a thumbs up from somebody.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then I'm going to quickly turn off my video so that my internet doesn't cut out, as it does that sometimes. And I'll just get right into it. So my presentation today is called Archiving Today, Supporting Legacy Management for Chicago's Black Youth and Students. Like Marcia said, I'm the Community Engagement Archivist. So that means that my primary tasks include creating resources for folks in Black communities around the Chicagoland area and connecting folks with our member institutions. And the first project that I worked on when I first started with BMRC last year that I'm going to talk about is our Legacy Management Resource Portal. This resource portal, which you can see a screenshot of on the right here, defines archives and also lists reasons why folks would either house their own collections or why they would choose to donate to a repository. This Legacy Management Resource Portal has 2 guides. The first, Guide to Managing Your Archives, that talks about physical archiving topics such as storage and housing, processing, arrangement, description, and providing access. And then the second guide to donating archival materials talks about choosing a repository, talking about housing and access at the repository, finding the right fit, negotiating and signing the deed of gift, and then finally preparing a collection for transfer. So this resource is helpful for students who are interested in understanding what archives are, how they're created, and also if there are students that are interested in archiving for themselves, which I know I was when I was younger, that's something that is definitely a resource available for students in any point in their career. This resource portal was funded by a generous grant from the Mellon Foundation, and this grant includes funding for programming. And to know which needs and wants from our community members to address in this programming that we had funding for, I ran a survey earlier this year. We ran our community needs and assets assessment in February and March of 2021. And this survey basically asked Chicagoans what they did and did not know about archiving, what they were interested in seeing from us through archival workshops. And we also offered entry into an archival toolkit raffle, which you can see an image of on the right here. We gave away 10 archival toolkits that included different archival supplies, included this box, some acid-free folders, some sleeves for photos and documents, some pamphlets with the Legacy Management Resource Portal information, as well as some information about how to do oral histories, and a flash drive, other materials like that. The survey in general consisted of phone calls to organizations and with community members, as well as an online survey that we put on the Qualtrics platform that we have hosted from University of Chicago. And to promote this survey, I ran a social media campaign with our intern at the time, Viviana Jimenez, who did a great job helping us promote the survey by highlighting member collections about marginalized communities within Black Chicago. We successfully highlighted 4 collections from our member repositories, including the Thing magazine collection from the Chicago History Museum, which was, Thing magazine was a Black LGBTQ magazine and zine run in Chicago, I believe out of Wicker Park, actually, from the 80s and 90s. And we also featured some zines from the Anthony Racine zine collection at DePaul University that were created by incarcerated women of color. So as we ran the survey, we obviously got responses, and some of them definitely were from younger people under the age of 30, which proves to us that there is interest in archiving and legacy management amongst young Black Chicagoans, although we did not ask our respondents if they were students. There was particularly interest in digital archiving, especially for personal and organizational legacy management. And to wrap up the community needs and assets assessment, we hosted 2 community discussions in the spring to further flesh out and talk about which topics community members wanted to see covered in our workshops that I mentioned we had funding for through the Mellon Grant. And so we've been hosting these workshops. I've been in the middle, knee deep in programming world. I hosted these workshops and I'm continuing to host a couple more in response to the needs from the survey as well as the discussions. The first 2 workshops were a 2-part introduction to archiving workshops. Part 1 covered appraisals, processing, describing, preservation, and providing access. The second part covered personal digital archiving and small-scale digitizations. We just last week had a genealogy workshop with African-American genealogist Tony Burrows that went really well. And upcoming, we have some panels, one about donations as well as other transfer agreements that I would like to educate community members about, because in the survey, we did have lots of questions about how folks could share their collections with institutions, and they have questions about retaining ownership or giving up ownership, things like that. And we also are planning on having a panel about funding for organizational projects. These workshops cater to our wide audience, but there has been significant interest from younger Black Chicagoans who are interested in proactively archiving their personal, family, and organizational histories. And so thinking of how to address the needs from the survey beyond these workshops, we have decided to add to the legacy management resource portal I just discussed earlier. We are adding an upcoming student and youth archiving resource to the legacy management resource portal. We just hired a student assistant, Warren Wagner, who will be helping create an additional page for this resource portal covering topics relevant to Black students and youth in the Chicagoland area. This resource will largely cover digital archiving topics such as archiving social media, archiving websites, born digital files and records, as well as tips for small-scale digitizations. We hope this resource will reach our students in our communities as well as the youth, because both groups are pushing forward really powerful movements in Black Chicago's communities, and it's been really evident to anybody who's been following the movements, and I think it's critical that we proactively document what's happening. Our goal is to support legacy management not only for Black families and Black elders, but for younger people and students who are also making significant impacts on archiving. I take proactive archiving to heart as a younger person in the field, and my hope with this resource is to disseminate accessible information about how to do just that. And that's about it for me. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'll turn my camera back on. And I'm also going to drop my email in the chat in case anybody has any questions, since I forgot to put that in my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanya, Laurie, and Allison. I hope that through their presentations, you've gotten a glimpse into some of the resources that the Black Metropolis Research Consortium can provide specifically for undergraduate students. So from our member institutions who are a part of the consortium, offering opportunities to really have students dive deep into the archival and library science profession, but also to do research that is relevant to the discovery and promotion of Black historical collections. You've gotten a glimpse at our upcoming portal that will be debuting in February for Black History Month, that will again provide some enhanced resources for doing research specifically with Black historical collections. And through the final presentation, you've gotten a glimpse at some of the resources that we hope to offer that will particularly be more so geared towards younger students through a youth and archiving resource available through the BMRC's website in the near future. We'd like to turn now to any questions that folks may have. So please feel free to put them in the chat. We're going to start with some questions that have already been left. So the first question I see, and I believe Crystal had to leave the call earlier, but we'll be sure to follow up with her on this. Crystal Johnson asked, would it be possible for the Chicago Metro History Fair to host an intern for a role that focuses on gathering and curating research sources from multiple institutions related to the upcoming year's theme? Allison, did you have anything you wanted to say to the question?
Well, I do think the Chicago Metro History Fair is under the umbrella of the Chicago History Museum, and they are a member. So there's maybe a conversation that could happen. I do know, I'm not sure if it would be something we could launch right away, because if I'm not mistaken, Marcia, this Metro History Fair is geared towards a younger group, not undergraduates. I think it's up through high school, and I'm not sure what the age range exactly is. But as you know, and we have discussed, one of our goals is to move forward to sort of expand what we are able to offer in terms of in exposing the younger generation to this sort of work. This might be a great pilot, right? So I'm sorry Crystal had to leave, but we will reach out. Maybe you and I can talk a little bit more about it and then get together with Crystal if we think we can make a plan. I love the idea.
Absolutely, it's a great idea. We also have a question from Ellie Walsh, which is, are these internships open to undergraduate students or restricted to those in certain programs?
It is not restricted. We do have a list of majors that, that we list on the website. And I think I did put it in the application web piece of the Archie Motley program. The application eligibility page is in the chat, but there are, we are interested in having students that are interested in history, political science, art history, public history, US history, whatever. But we did have, like in 2020, we had an econ major who had very good experience and interest in history. So it sort of just worked. And we don't restrict it that much. And with regard to undergrads, I think I mentioned that we put more effort in getting a upper level, but we did have an outstanding intern this past summer who was a rising sophomore. So.
And I would add as well, the internship program is growing. And so we started off only being able to offer opportunities to University of Chicago students because we had funding through the university to support those internships. We've now expanded and have enjoyed funding through partnerships with DePaul University and their library, which has been great. And we are also putting more funding from our own budget into the Archie Motley internship program in order to expand opportunities for students at our other member institutions. And this is a program that we definitely want to continue to enhance and grow. We know, as Allison showed through her presentation, that there are 4 of our students who have gone into library science and archives, but we're also going to be tracking some of the others and going back and doing some research to see where the rest of the students from the program have landed, because it's highly possible that others may have gone into the field as well. Any other questions? You can certainly pop them into the chat. I don't know if folks are also able to unmute themselves if they prefer to ask their questions directly, but please feel free to keep them coming.
You can unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question right now. Please feel free.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Is it Tasha?
Okay. Yes, it is. Oh, there I am. Oh, okay. Well, there we go. I am coming to you all from South Carolina, Cherokee County, and I am a current student in my last semester at Dominican. I'm also a DePaul graduate. I am also a person who acquired an LTA years ago. You can tell here, this is currently COVID here. And so I just wanted to ask, because I'm currently working at a historical and preservation society here in Cherokee County that has been established since 1969. And in doing my research, was asked, wouldn't it be nice if we could develop a file for our Black constituents of the county? A file, you all, a file, not a room, not a wing, but a file. And the demographics here, 45, 45, and 10. 45 Black, 45 white, and 10. Again, a society since 1969. What I am doing is trying to create an establishment, right, to show documentation of the persons that were integral in the development of this county. And I came across some papers that were paper clipped, oral, statements of what has happened with different business people. One of my question is what materials would you recommend for archival materials to record some of the oral histories of people that we have, maybe taking it from cassettes into a better digital format? And then also, what materials would you suggest for some of the written documentation that we have on some of the histories and stories of people of this region?
Tanya, Laurie, Allison, would either of you like to? I can, but I'll defer to our presenters.
One thing I would say, in my previous position, I dealt with a lot of different sound recordings and formats.
Mhm.
A lot of them say audio cassettes is getting harder to find playback machines.
Mhm.
And they are often in a cheaper housing. And so I would recommend, I don't know if you have a lot of different formats of things or whatever, to kind of do a little triage to figure out which ones are going to like self-destruct sooner, or where the playback or ability to access it is going to be difficult, and even more difficult as the years go by. And that's true for like floppy disks and all that kind of stuff too.
Okay. Okay.
It's just a practical.
Yeah, and I would also say, as far as like, if you're looking, like what Laurie's saying, like playback machines, if you're looking to digitize the cassette tapes, there are a good amount of resources online about how to set up a digitization station, where you could sort of just play back and then record digitally. I think I have some links saved that I'm going to dig around for in a second before I get off the call and see if I can send them to you.
Awesome.
And those are also good if you ever find, like, it's a similar process if you find analog video materials. It's a similar playback situation. And then I'm not really sure about paper materials, but I know Marcia has some experience with oral histories that I think she might have interest in.
Yeah, I can jump in. And I also just put into the chat for everyone a link to our YouTube channel. So on the BMRC's YouTube channel, we actually have recordings of 2 of the workshops that Tanya gave earlier this fall about introduction to archiving. So thinking about kind of paper materials, manuscript collections, as well as some basic digitization and digital preservation. And so those are up and free on our website for our YouTube for anyone to access. And there are also some conversations about Black historical collections as well for folks who might be interested in showing them to your students. I think, again, Tasha, in terms of like manuscript collections, certainly you're going to need some archival storage boxes and containers. So getting familiar with the Gaylord website and others, your acid-free folders, things of that nature. I would also say that one of the funding organizations that we partner with is the Gaylord and Dorothy Donnelly Foundation. And they actually operate here in Chicago and also in the South Carolina Low Country. And they have been doing a lot of work with their new strategy, which is broadening narratives. And it's specifically around the thing that you're talking about, is really ensuring that organizations who maybe haven't necessarily documented Black history and culture in those regions in the ways that they would like to, they can propose projects to get funding to do that work. Because you're going to need some funding in order to be able to not just have a file, not just have one box, but to have many boxes or a room of boxes, or, you know, a website that really shows you know, the breadth and the scope of that history.
Yes.
So I would, I'll put my email in the chat as well. I'd be happy to connect them to you
Awesome. Thank you.
directly, so you can have a conversation with them. But I think increasing the kind of buy-in and helping folks to understand that, you know, thinking about contributions, the experiences of Black people, you can't really relegate it to a file in any context, right?
No,
That it takes a concerted effort to really document that, to build relationships and trust with local communities who may have been excluded from historical societies or institutions. I mean, that's something that we work with a lot, and having conversations with our members, thinking about particular projects or initiatives that will help build those bridges. So we're definitely happy and here as a resource. We certainly focus on the Chicagoland area and our members, but we're happy to be a reference and a referral source for anyone who's doing this work that aligns with our mission.
Thank you so much. And I do want to say that the board is, you know, eager to meet the demands and representation for this segment of our community, and are, you know, are open to whatever I can provide for help. So thank you so much. I'll follow up with you. Thank you. Thank you all.
Good luck in your program.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. We're hoping that, you know, people will be able to use these free tools and really get, you know, excited about the fact that, you know, you can jump in, you can do this. It doesn't have to be a major institution, it can be community-based. There's a lot of ways to do this. And you know, Tanya is working on that too.
I'm excited. Thank you so much, you all.
Any other questions, comments, feedback? If there's anything you're wondering that the BMRC does, but maybe we didn't talk about, or suggestions for us to think about, we're happy to take those. Great. Well, thank everyone for joining us. I'll turn it over to Jacob in case there's any sort of last minute or housekeeping things that we need to do. But thank you all for joining us. And we really do hope that you will continue to follow us and reach out to us with any questions or, you know, anything we can do to be helpful to you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, all the presenters. And just a reminder that this session is recorded and will be available along with other sessions, as well as a transcript, which we'll be putting together after the summit and making available to everybody. With that being said, I know the email addresses were also provided for in the chat, which will also be saved. And you can, of course, feel free, as the presenters offered, to reach out to them via email as well. With that, just a second reminder that following this is a lightning round presentation, which I will also be there helping to moderate at 11 o'clock, followed by a social event. So thank you again for this wonderful presentation, and I hope to see you all later in the day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jacob.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.